When we think of deserts, we usually picture these huge empty barriers that keep people apart. But what if I told you that one of the biggest deserts in the world wasn't a barrier at all? What if it was actually a superhighway, one that connected entire empires and completely shaped the world as we know it?
I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense, right? This Sahara Desert, we're talking about an ocean of sand that's bigger than the United States. It's kind of the definition of in the middle of nowhere. So how on earth did this place become a massive hub of global connection? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. Okay, to really get our heads around this, just for a second, forget about cars, forget about planes. I want you to picture a trip from Lagos to Kano, but instead of it taking a day, imagine it takes months on the back of a camel, across nothing but burning sand, always worried about sandstorms or running out of water. That was the unbelievable reality for these traders. It was an incredibly high risk, but also super high reward business. So before we even get into what they were trading, we have to tackle a way more basic question. How is a journey like this even possible? How do you even begin to build a highway out of sand? So the system we're talking about is called the Trans-Saharan Trade. And it really wasn't a single road. A better way to think about it is like a giant circulatory system, a whole web of arteries that for centuries pumped not just goods, but people, ideas, and culture across entire continents. And it turns out this whole thing was made possible by two key innovations. First, you needed the right tech, and that was the camel. I mean, this was basically the ultimate all-terrain vehicle of its day. And second, you needed the right organization, the caravan. You see, you never, ever crossed the Sahara alone. You traveled in these huge, organized groups for safety and to be way more efficient. Okay, so they figured out the how, but what about the why? I mean, what kind of stuff was so valuable that it made people risk this absolutely insane journey? That's what really fueled the whole system. And right here, you can see the incredible exchange that was at the heart of it all. You had gold flowing north from West Africa, fueling economies thousands of miles away. But in return, something you might not expect came south. Salt. It was absolutely essential for preserving food. Powerful horses also made the journey south, becoming these major symbols of military might for states like Borno. And of course, we have to acknowledge the devastating human cost. The trade in enslaved people, which left such a tragic and lasting legacy on the region. Now, what's truly mind-blowing here is the dynamic between salt and gold. In some places, salt was so vital and so hard to get that it was, and I mean this literally, traded for its equal weight in gold. Just think about that. One was a life-or-death necessity, the other was the ultimate luxury. And that incredible tension is what drove this entire network. Now, this wasn't just random wandering in the desert hoping for the best. No, this was a highly structured system with established superhighways all carved right through the sand. Let's take a look at the main routes. These were the big ones, the major arteries. Routes like the one from the Kanem-Borno Empire all the way to Tripoli were total economic lifelines. And notice something here. Cities like Borno and Kano, in what is now northern Nigeria, were absolutely critical hubs. Their power didn't come from being on the coast. It came from being at the center of this huge desert network, connecting West Africa's incredible wealth directly to the Mediterranean world. So it's so important to see these as way more than just lines on a map. They were the lifelines that funded powerful states and built magnificent cities right in the middle of the Sahel. They completely reshaped the political landscape of the entire region. But, the gold and the salt, they weren't the most important things that were exchanged on these long journeys. Turns out, the most valuable cargo was completely invisible. This highway of goods, it was also a highway for world-changing ideas. So what did this trade in ideas look like? Well, it brought three massive shifts. First, a new faith. Islam arrived, not through war, but peacefully, through commerce. And with it came a new language and a whole new system of writing, Arabic. And finally, all of this interaction created a new, blended culture that would define the region for centuries to come. And that is such a fascinating question to just stop and think about for a second, right? We so often connect the spread of empires and religions with conflict and war. But this was different. So how did it happen? Well, the key, once again, was the caravan itself. See, it wasn't just a convoy of stuff. It was a moving community. You had traders, scholars, and pilgrims all traveling together for months on end. And in all that time, they didn't just trade salt for gold. They shared stories, they shared knowledge, and they shared their beliefs. And what this all really proves is that connection and commerce can be these incredibly powerful forces for change. Mutual respect and cooperation, driven by the fact that everyone had something to gain, created a transformation that was way more lasting than military force ever could have been. Which, of course, brings us all the way back to that big question we started with. After looking at the technology, the goods, the routes, and the ideas, how do we finally answer it? So in the end, the answer is that this trade did so much more than just move goods around. It connected entire continents. It provided the economic muscle for powerful empires to rise. And it acted as a giant conveyor belt for ideas that shaped the cultural and religious identity of West Africa, a legacy that is still so vibrant today. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. The camel caravans are gone, sure, but our world is more connected now than ever before. So it's worth asking yourself, what are the invisible highways of our time? And what powerful ideas are they carrying that are shaping your world right now?